Okay, so in today's video, we're going to talk about the details that either make or break your project car. Okay, so I'm right between projects right now where the major pieces of the doors are done, but I still have some leftover pieces that remain, right? Doors are really complex components on your car. In fact, I never really appreciated how complicated they were until I started doing this part. And always it's the details that kills every single project. So once you roll your car into paint and you get it back into your garage, then you start noticing all the things that you've left behind along the way. So in today's video, we're going to be covering all of that stuff, and we'll show you how I'm dealing with that for this particular project. Okay, so it's little things like door handles, right? So some of these parts are available in the aftermarket for this particular car model, right? So for the Volvo Amazon / Canadian, but some of them aren't, right? The door handles are actually available, but the door buttons aren't, right? So you can't get that part. Now, these aren't in bad shape, right? They look pretty good. In fact, when they were on the car, they're nice and shiny, and I think I was pretty happy with them. But one thing I know from doing this for years and years and years is as soon as I get fresh coat of paint on the car and everything's ready to go, that part's going to start looking not so nice. Then you're going to wish you would have chrome plated it. Now, instead of driving the car, now you're stuck waiting for the chrome plater to get their work done, if you can even find anyone that's still any good at it, right? That's a dying art. Things like the door latches, like you only see this part and this part of the door latch, but the rest of it, you know, how are you going to get it plated? Well, I'm going to show you how in today's video. And again, nothing really wrong with these parts, but let's focus on the pin at the bottom, if the camera would be so kind. You see there's a little spot of wear there. The original sort of galvanizing on this part it's pretty good actually for the part, but it's going to look pretty ratty when you put it next to a freshly coated part. And then, you know, there's things like the inside parts of the door mechanisms, all the little bits and pieces. This one still has the schmoo on it from before, right? Ugh, it's got gross bits all over the place. So it needs to be cleaned up. These ones I'm not going to plate. They're inside the door. But we're going to have a look at each one of those parts. Then there's things like the door glass, right? Vent windows, quarter windows, all of those detailed pieces that if we don't get them touched up now, we're going to hate it later when we start to put the car together and find out that, you know, well, we got a shiny coat of paint, so we're going to have to wait another 6 months before we can get the car on the road.
Well, it's usually at least that by the time you find the parts and make sure they're labeled properly. So here I am digging through my boxes of parts. I do have to get them out of the cardboard box. That's not acceptable, but we'll move along as we go. So into the bits and pieces of the door. So here the door handles are coming apart. I've got the limiting straps as well. They used to just be painted. The paint will never stay on those, so I'm just going to have those plated. And I'm just doing a little quick tidy up on everything. And then as I'm going, I mean, the only reason I'm showing you guys any of this stuff, because it's sort of hopelessly detailed, is it's important to take note of every little detail along the way. Now, a lot of these parts I am able to get, so I'm not forced to reuse the cruddy old parts that are in there, but you know, each and every one of those, like, you know, clean the screws out before you try to take them out. Photograph which way the gaskets go on. Make sure all the parts are cleaned that can be cleaned. And then, you know, I'm just using a little bit of Varsol. I'm also using some water-based degreaser when I go to soak things, and it works great. Let's get that 50 and 60-year-old grease out of these parts. They're not going to be any good with that in there. Clean them up really well. Those just got a shot of Tremclad actually, and they're good to go. And I have a whole stock of these tiny little bags, which are so very useful. Now I soaked this. This is water-based cleaner. I soaked these parts for several hours, and the grease inside still solid, not moving. It's not being dissolved by this material. So it wasn't too sad when I knew they had to come apart. Now my plater said that he can plate these pieces together, and of course they'll put them into some nasty industrial chemical that will strip all that stuff out. But I just thought it'll be a whole lot better job if I take them apart, drill and tap the holes, which I did, replace the sort of peened over staked bits with threaded M4 fasteners. So I did all that work, photograph every single part. These are complex door mechanisms. They are handed, they are sided. It's going to be difficult to get these back together perfectly. if I don't do that step of taking the pictures and making sure I know how they work. So actually, as I take them apart, I put them back together and make sure I've had the experience of reassembling the part and make sure it works. You won't want to find that out later.
Okay, so here we have all the parts laid out. Everything has been taken apart for both mechanisms. Of course, they're mirrored. There's a right and a left-hand side. So even though my plater will probably try to keep these separated, will photograph everything here just to make sure that I get the handedness correct when I go to put these back together. And what I've done, of course, all the parts have been cleaned, right, and bagged up, ready to go. They're labeled. But for each one of the spot welds that I took out, I've drilled and tapped them and inserted a screw, right? So I've drilled and tapped them M4 right here, there and there. And I've paid careful attention to the alignment. So you'll see this is not as easy as it looks because there are things like this hole's got a hex, these holes have flats on them to prevent the springs from moving. So you have to be very careful when you put them back together. And then they have to fit together really nicely. They don't automatically. These are, again, they're just a pressed in part. So they won't fit really nicely right off the hop, right? They were put together and drifted into place, and that's how you get the alignment. But when you're going to go with a threaded hole, then it's up to you to get the alignment right. So I had to correct and move things around just right. So I'm going to just put a little bit of weld on these areas that are worn out. And while I'm in there, I will spot those two pins with the backing plate screwed down just to make sure they stay in the right place. And then I can buff those off nicely, send them off for plating, and hopefully they come back as nice as I think they will. All right, so let's carry on with this insane project.
All right, so with those bits done, it's now time to get the old plating off. You don't want to try to weld through the galvanizing. In fact, I had some trouble with the galvanizing sort of wicking through from the backside of the part, and I know better, but whatever. Anyway, so all I'm doing here is just laying in a tiny tack. There's nothing much to it. I'm only using an 045 rod, so there's no big deal there at all. Just one little tack, and then I grind most of that tack off because I just want that pin to stay in the same place. Especially, and then these are those areas that are worn on the pins, so I'm just putting in a couple of stringer beads there of weld, and then sanding those back flush and smooth and making sure they're perfect. Then everything is going to get deburred, take care of all the bits and pieces. Now the hard part, glass removal. This was terrible. The garage was about 35 degrees Celsius. It was so hot out there, and I have no idea how this stuff comes apart. Like, I can take a quarter window in and out of a car. I've just never taken one completely apart before. I have 5 of these windows, so I've accumulated a set over the years. I did need to take apart all except for one. So I'm being super careful. Like, they're held together with some brass rivets and things. I'm being super careful. I don't want to damage the parts. Some of them are better than others. These are the really good ones. And then the glass. So once I get that rivet out of there and record how it all works, then it's about trying to figure out, okay, how's this glass come out? Well, the only way it comes out, it's just sitting in there in a little rubber channel. That's it. But it won't budge. It's not coming out of that rubber channel anytime soon. So I have to cut the rubber channel out. Now, in so doing, I did manage on one of the windows, which I label later as being no good, to scratch the glass. And usually that's difficult to do with a tempered window. But there must have been a little bit of sand or gunk inside there. I probably picked up a little grain of sand I didn't see, and I scratched the window. So upset about that. I didn't notice it until right about now, and I noticed a little scratch. And these windows, you're always after ones that have nice imprints, all that kind of stuff. So there, NFG, that's not going to work. Tape it up, go and take another one apart, and make sure I have one good set. I did get one good set. Now the quarter windows. Again, no clue how those come apart either. So I knew there were screws in the bottom. I know people tell you not to take them apart, so I did it anyway. And same story, right? You're gonna tag and bag everything, take pictures of it all. The bottom channel actually pulled out pretty easily, and you see all the dirt and other embedded stuff in these windows. And you find out it's basically the same channel. The top part of it pulled out. I will not be reusing it. I did find a source for that glass channel. It's a standard size, which is super nice. Now the windows go back together. And I'm going to let the plater decide what more needs to be to come apart for these things. I don't second guess the people who do this for a living. All right, license plate bracket, old school, you bolt through it. The best way to do it is to actually have it as a little stud. So I just throw some nuts in the back of it here, weld them on. And then I'm going to go through the extra step. Actually, I've got the stainless steel acorn nuts. There they are there, and they're bagged, tagged, and put away. So whenever I pull these pieces out to put them back on the car, I know where those pieces are. So here the door strikes, the door catches, so you clean those all out for the plater. And then they were never deburred from the factory ever. So they just, these are production parts. So I just went in and carefully deburred all little bits and pieces, make sure they're in nice shape. They're not worn out or anything like that, but I just want them to be neat and tidy. Now it just takes hours and hours and hours and hours to do this detail work. I know it's not exciting, but this is what it takes. Right? Hopefully, if you're still watching, that's why I'm leaving all this in. I'm not trying to get a view statistic or anything on YouTube. I really don't care. I just think it's good for people who are going to try to do this to know how much effort it actually takes to get this done. Now, with all of these pieces ready to go, I'm going to make up a shipping label. I've sent parts out for chrome plating. I've been at this for a long time. The gray in the beard is hard-earned. And whenever I do this, they'll get it wrong. It's not really their fault. But if you take proper notes, so I'm making a packing list, and on that packing list, I'm listing every single detail. The bags are labeled, their bags are numbered, the finish is labeled, the number of parts in the bag is indicated, every single detail. And I've taken photographs of every single part, and I know every bit that I've sent to these guys. There's a lot of little bits and pieces that are going in for chrome plating. Or in this case, a satin nickel is what I'm going with the rest of it. So we've got to get all of that stuff done up, or you can't expect them to come back and be right. And even with all of this work, I still can't expect them to be right. Yeah, even little things like tightening up the rivets, just making sure everything's tidy in the way you want it. Then we're going to get the box ready to go, and the pieces are going to be packed, labeled, and ready to ship. So now we're just waiting for them to contact me and tell me what this is all going to cost.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. All the parts have gone off to the plater. Actually, just waiting for a phone call from the guy. So when he gets the pieces, so we've got the packing list with all the detail pieces on them, including the number of parts, the plating that's going to go on each one of those parts, right? And the bag number. The bags are then also numbered, and the bags have all that same information on them. Why? Every time I've sent anything out for chrome plating, it always comes back wrong. So you try to at least start with a fighting chance, right? I've also photographed each and every part, and I photographed all the packing lists so I know what I've sent off. Anyway, thanks a lot for coming along for the ride on this video. It's been fun, and more fun yet to come on the next series of videos. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe.